to work. You have to truly believe in the magic.
Hey Magic fans, and welcome to this new episode of Let's Talk Magic, an Orlando Magic podcast. Today we're going to be talking, as the summer continues, it's not getting any quieter, it's not getting any slower. We have Franz being extended. We have the news about free agency in regards to Markelle and Tuma, their rights being waived. And we also have Summer League just around the corner. So to discuss it all, we will be shortly joined by our very special guest, the Orlando Magic beat reporter for the Orlando Sentinel, Jason Beede. But before that, Mikey and Grant are on our injury report, one for personal reasons, one is on holiday, and the other has family demands. So it's down to myself and what I can only recall name as, well, the Big Mackham. How you doing, my friend Gary?
Oh, I'm all good, mate. It's just the two of us here. G's out there in Germany watching England play, I believe, and just leaves you and me, really. We'll get Mikey back, and yeah, but well, mate, good on you, G. Good on you, G, for going out there.
I was gutted that Mikey's not on because I'd got my introduction written. I'd written that somebody who's very often unavailable, but when he does turn up, you get good production out of him. Our very own Wendell Carter Jr., Mikey Clark. And he dropped in, he's not available. I had to rewrite the start.
He's done you there, mate. Or more importantly, though, how is the bacon today?
Oh, mate, somewhat under the weather. As you experienced last week and the week before, I have this week. The dreaded COVID, but there we go. I shall get through this as best I can. I apologise to anybody if I sound drunk or look drugged up on this, because it's just the medication that I'm trying to take down to just get through things for the day. Feeling a little bit rough, but hey, we're here and we're going to have a good time. So before we dive into this, we're going to do the Patreon shout out. As always, we want to say a big thank you to the guys who support us. It's incredible what they do with us. So to Barry Conn, Paolo and Franz Warmth, Ollie Law, Gary Clark, Angus Craig, Dylan Holden, Alan Kane, Tom Soane, Mark Joss, Sean Moore, Liam Radbourne, Andy Linley, Stuart Benzies, Drummy Drum, Podfather Phil Love, Hazy Northwestern, and Michael Martin. We genuinely thank you. And if you are interested in joining our Patreon, there are 3 tiers available, varying benefits. Visit patreon.com/Let's Talk Magic, or you can hit our socials or our website, and the links are on there. We'd love you to come and join us. We'd love you to hang out with Discord and also on our monthly web chat that we host. So, I think it's time to do it. Let's get Jason on. And we are now joined by somebody who it has been altogether too long in inviting onto this podcast. This week's guest onto the show, finally. Beat reporter for the Orlando Magic, for the Orlando Sentinel, Jason B. Jason, thank you for joining us. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. It was slow after the season ended, and then it picked right back up with the draft and free agency, and now we're heading to Summer League, and it's fun to be busy again.
And we have roughly half an hour with you because you are, as you say, very busy. You're in the process of packing, I believe, to head to Vegas.
Yeah, I fly out early Friday morning. The Magic play their first game. It's actually not just their first game; it's the first game of the entire Summer League.
It is
a little, exciting, of course. And then I'll be out there for about 5 days, a couple games, couple practices. It's just a really exciting event. It's kind of like almost like a powwow convention of sorts for the NBA. And then on top of that, you happen to be in Las Vegas. I'm not a big casino gambler guy or anything like that, but it is always fun to see the sights and sounds of Vegas and just get to network and report on a bunch of stuff. So it should be a fun event again.
How long are you out there for? You there for the duration?
I'm out there for about 5 days. So not the whole thing, but probably about half of it. I'll be there for 2 Magic games. And usually the way it works is last year, I think Anthony Black and Jet Howard only played 2 or 3 games. They definitely don't play all 5 games. So, that's definitely something that I took into consideration because, even though they do have a good, Summer League roster, Tristan De Silva, AB, Jet, I mean, those guys might only play, 1 or 2 games. I mean, Tristan will definitely play at least 2 games, maybe even 3. But AB and Jet, I'm not sure exactly how much they need of Summer League, but it should be a good time nonetheless.
Awesome, excellent. Okay, mate. That leads us nicely into where we're going to go first of all, because I want to start here, and it follows up on some of your most recent work that you've put out. It's all around Anthony Black, Jet Howard, and Tristan De Silva, you've already mentioned. What can you tell us about their mindset and the potential role within the team ahead of the new season for those particular three guys?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Tristan is so mature. Like, even though he's a rookie, he is 3 years older than AB and Jet. And I kind of forgot just how young Anthony and Jet are. My dog is barking. I apologize.
Nothing wrong with getting in on the podcast.
She's getting really excited. What I was saying was, it was almost like, because I had been away from the team for a little bit after the season ended, I kind of forgot just how young Jet and Anthony are. And we spoke with Tristan, and it was like, oh wow, he's well beyond his years for a rookie. He is 23 years old. And then we spoke with Anthony and Jet following the first practice or second practice of the summer league squad, and obviously those you could definitely tell some growth maturity wise from those two. But Jet made a funny point, like he's younger than Tristan, but he's giving advice to him like he's a vet or something like that. So seeing that in action, seeing that in person was interesting. But in terms of their mindset, I think for Jet, it's showing that you belong in the NBA. Orlando obviously believes in him, and I've spoken with Jeff Weltman about this and Jamal Mosley about this. Like, they obviously see him as a piece of their future, but he also spent majority of his first year in the G League, and nothing's wrong with that. But when you're a number 11 pick, I think he played the fewest minutes, or some of the fewest minutes among all the lottery picks last year. A little bit of that has to do with the fact that the Magic's needs in their roster, they don't necessarily need a ton of younger players. That was something we were curious about heading into this draft, let alone last year's draft. And that was something they said last year. These young guys, regardless of who they were drafting, they're going to have to earn their playing time. It just so happened that in the beginning part of the season, Markelle Fultz was no longer available for an extended period of time, and Anthony Black was, the go-to guy. That was done so that, Jamal Mosley could keep his second unit together with Cole and that group. But Anthony Black was suddenly starting and playing a lot, and here was Jet Howard down in Osceola. But I think Jet handled it very well. I mean, every time he was back with the Magic in the NBA locker room, I made it a priority to talk with him, and that was a few times throughout the season. I have a good relationship with Dylan Murphy, the Osceola coach, and I think really he handled it about as well as you could. Some guys could be really selfish and want out of that situation or whatever it might be, and I think he understands he has to be really patient, and the Magic are being patient with him. But in terms of his role and his expectations and his mindset for this summer league and this season, you have to be pushing for minutes. You have to be pushing for playing time in your second year, because in a couple of years you're going to be negotiating for your second contract again. I mean, it's we were just talking with them, AB and Jet, the fact that they are no longer rookies and time flies by, and before you look up, I mean, he's already down his sophomore year. So that's the mindset for Jet. For Anthony Black, I think his role in the Summer League squad will be different than his role for the Orlando Magic. It really seems like he's going to be this point guard, this leader, really organizing the group. And I think that's a good thing for what the Magic want in him in his future. Obviously, they took him 6 overall for a reason, but we didn't really see that. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot his rookie year. I mean, obviously no one expected him to be starting that many games, let alone playing that many games. And he did. And I thought at times we saw a little bit of what he could do, but really he was asked to kind of wait in the wings, find his 3-point shot and shoot. For the Summer League squad, we're really going to see on display his ability to be a point guard. And that's something that's exciting for me. I think it should be exciting for viewers. How is he going to control the ball, direct traffic, and really just, be that guy for that Summer League squad that people are going to be able to play around and whatnot. So I think if you're the Magic, you're looking at how he handles that, how he handles the situations. And then for Tristan, because he's an older prospect, there's talk that, because he's an older prospect that, maybe his how much he can grow is lower than maybe a 19 or 20-year-old prospect compared to him who has, 4 years of college experience under his belt. But when you talk to Jeff and Jamal, they both still see untapped growth. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still pretty young, right? And he does have a lot of experience, but it'll be interesting to see what he does for the Summer League squad and where he fits in for the Magic. I mean, did they really need another young player? I'm not sure. But at the same time, we know about some of the injury problems they dealt with last season that ended up getting some of these other guys in the rotation and whatnot. But for Tristan, I think it's just really showcasing your skill set, showcasing why they drafted him at that point, why they felt confident in him. That's shooting, that's attacking in open space. We know about the fact that he shot 39% from three the last 2 years. So clearly, they one of the biggest needs is shooting for this team. So maybe he fills that gap. But with the amount of guys in front of him, it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to spend more time in Osceola, kind of like Jet did last year, or if they say, hey, we you're a little bit older, you understand the game a little bit better, you fit right in, and you're part of the rotation. So that's something we have to monitor, of course. But entering Summer League, it's just going to be fun to watch him play. Along AB and Jet, how they mold and fit together.
It's brilliant.
And jumping to the opposite end of the spectrum, we've obviously signed KCP. How significant a signing do you find that for the Magic, Jason?
Yeah, it was interesting. Entering free agency, there were all these rumors about Paul George, and then there was the reporting that he was going to get a meeting with the Magic. I don't know if we actually ever got that confirmed. I personally haven't confirmed it. I don't think I've seen actual reporting around that. But it was pretty clear to me once free agency opened up about a week or two ago that, hey, they're going after KCP, that he was his priority from the offset. And I think even though he might not be as big of a name as Paul George or Klay Thompson or someone like that, I still think KCP is a really great addition for this team. He's a 2-time NBA champion. He's an elite defender. He shoots the ball really well from 3-point range, and he's durable, right? When they signed him, that was the biggest thing, the durability. I think he's played in 96% of regular season games the last 10 years, which is just an insane stat when you think about durability and playing in this league. And you see guys on the roster last year. Gary Harris misses a lot of time. I think I wrote in one of my stories that KCP has played in 70 more games like 3 of the last 4 years, and Gary's only played in 60 games or more once in his entire career. And that's nothing against Gary. I think he's still an important role, and to bring him back is important as well. But with Kentavious, you upgrade and you upgrade at the starting guard. It's also an indication that they believe in Jalen Suggs as a point guard. If you assume that, obviously Paolo, Franz, and Wendell are starters, and Jalen is too, and you're not signing KCP not to start. So you look at that starting five, and you insert KCP, who's an upgrade. Thanks to his durability, his defense, and his shooting. It says a lot about where the But for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to go into free agency, decline his player option from the Denver Nuggets, leaving Nikola Jokic, leaving a championship team to go see in the free agency market and see something in the Orlando Magic and pick the Magic in free agency really says a lot about the growth of the franchise, the direction under Jamal Mosley, the stars of Paolo and Franz, and what they're building there. And I think he sees as a vet that there's something here. And, obviously they're not going to contend for a championship this season, but he has a couple years on his deal, 3-year deal. And he clearly sees something in this franchise to help them get over that hump and reach the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially the NBA Finals and down the road.
It's interesting what you said there when you said about Jalen Suggs, Jason, about him, almost it looks as though he's perhaps been handed the keys to the point guard position. And I know within our community, Markelle Fultz not returning has certainly divided opinion. Some people have been a little bit surprised by it. From your angle, obviously you're in Orlando, we're not. But what's your view on the Fultz situation? Were you surprised? Are there any insights to the rationale behind that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Not only is Markelle not re-signed with Orlando, he hasn't signed anywhere yet.
Yeah.
And I will say free agency has kind of slowed down. Markelle is not the only quality player out there. Gary Trent Jr. is out there. Tyus Jones is out there. Luke Kennard is out there. Yeah. There's a lot of solid guards and players of that level that are still available on the free agency market. I don't know if they're waiting for something to happen or waiting for training camp to come around. And there's, the Magic still, of course, do have one standard contract roster spot open in addition to two-way spots. But at the same time, they clearly weren't in a rush to go after Markelle Fultz. And it really indicates, kind of an end of an era in a sense for him. and the Magic. I think he played a really important role for Orlando during his time. I mean, he was a great guy, and I think a fan favorite for sure. At the same time, he just wasn't healthy, and this last year really showed it. Where obviously we know about his shooting struggles and his inability to shoot and his shoulder problems and whatnot. The problem this year was the combination of that and his knee issues that he dealt with. When he wasn't getting that lift from his knees and his shoulders weren't working the way he wants them to, and his shooting problems, he did eventually attempt a few threes here and there and whatnot. It just really limited what he could do. And when this is a team that needs shooting, it became really obvious. Now, that being said, when they got to the playoffs and they played Cleveland, the first two games were not very well done. And Markelle Fultz was a guy who was able to penetrate the paint and really open some things up and drive down and direct traffic. And I think he still played an important role for last year's squad. When they added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I figured Gary Harris wasn't the one coming back. And then they re-signed Gary Harris for an extremely cheap deal. Yeah. And now kind of was like, oh, that's interesting. And then Joe Ingles goes off to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and there's still a spot. And Markelle still hasn't filled that spot. So, look, there's clearly no rush to fill this spot. Otherwise, they would have done so already. I think leaving this spot open, this final standard contract spot open, allows you to go into the summer and then see what else happens and go into training camp, and maybe you use that as bait to get one of these other guards out there that's still waiting around to see what happens, or maybe you leave the spot open for trade flexibility down the line. And that's just my speculation. I'm not saying they're going to be making a trade anytime soon, but those are the options that you can do with that roster spot, and they do have that roster spot. But in terms of Markelle Fultz, obviously he was just a really great guy to talk with, and he played an important piece for this Magic squad. And as I mentioned, I think the fans love him. And I think, when you were looking at teams that where he could have fit or helped, I mean, the San Antonio Spurs would have been a spot, maybe even Washington would have been a spot, and San Antonio goes and adds Chris Paul. Obviously those aren't the same level of player, but price-wise in particular would have been somewhat similar, and their experience and whatnot around the league. Would have been interesting to see him there, or maybe even Detroit. I know there was some speculation with Gary Harris going to the Pistons or whatever it was. But yeah, in terms of Markelle, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, because obviously he's still very talented, still a great locker room guy. And of course, at the end of the day, if the Magic want to bring him back, they could. But I haven't heard anything pointing towards that direction this time.
Okay, that's interesting. Insight. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, continuing kind of on the theme of decisions that have been a little bit divisive amongst the fan base. Franz Wagner's deal, Jonathan Isaac, Gary Harris. We've discussed our own personal views, and we can find merit in each of those moves that they've been made, some more than others. Gary Harris is probably the hardest one for us to get our head around, but when you consider that bringing in KCP moves him down the pecking order, you're possibly not going to have such demands on Gary. So it would be interesting to hear your thoughts, Jason, on these deals, and with you being in and around the team and the training centre.
Yeah, I think obviously the big one is Franz Wagner.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this with Philip at Orlando Magic Daily. I was on his podcast maybe a few weeks ago talking about this before it was all done and whatnot. Obviously, very clearly, Franz Wagner is a max player. I think we can agree on that.
100%.
He's still so young. He's still really talented. He just improved in every aspect this season besides 3-point shooting. He had career highs in assists, points, steals, rebounds, all the above. And he had some major performances this season in the past. The one thing is everyone thinks about Game 7, right? And everyone thinks about his 3-point shooting and whatnot. And I think the problem with Franz 3-point shooting, it's less of a concern for me, because obviously he's still really young. He just clearly he was, needed some time off, needed some rest, and he's going to put the work in. Like, we know Franz Wagner is going to put the work in to improve and fix his 3-point shot. The problem more so was on a team that's kind of like Markelle Fultz, on a team that needed shooting, and one of your pillars of your roster, and Franz Wagner, is not shooting the way he wants, the way the team needs, it becomes more magnified. There were a lot of times this season where his shot just fell short. Like, it literally was, it hit the front of the rim over and over and over again. And he didn't have that same lift or whatever it was. So, obviously he dealt with that ankle injury. He played in the FIBA World Cup last year. He played a lot of basketball. That's not to say he's not young and they have great, physical therapy and recovery and whatnot. But I think when you look at his individual performances that he had throughout the year, and his performances against Cleveland in Game 6 in particular, he still had an incredible season for his career and where he is at his age. And with all of that considered, you absolutely have to give him the max contract, especially when you look around the rest of the league and you see who else is getting large contracts like that. So that was just I understand why some fans feel differently and they think about the 115 Game 7 performance, but you don't make a multi-million decision of that scale on one game or a handful of games. It's the body of work, and they know that he's going to put in that work to continue to improve and come back. And that the best part is he's a hard worker, and the rest of his team is. And we're going to see where he goes and potentially improves his 3-point shooting because everything else is there. And he's still really young. So that made a lot of sense to me. And then the Jonathan Isaac deal is really interesting. In retrospect, it should have been more obvious that this is something they could have looked to get done. In reality, I think I read that only 12 players in the NBA since 2006 have gotten a year on their contract renegotiated. So for Jonathan Isaac to renegotiate and extend, obviously extending is one thing, but to actually renegotiate his contract, that was such a smart move by Jeff Waltman in the front office.
It was.
Because it allows you to reward him and giving him money this year while considering cap space and the new CBA and those other extensions coming down the pipe. We mentioned Franz Wagner. They're still working with Jalen Suggs. And in a year, Paolo Banchero will be max eligible. Obviously, they're going to give him max extension there. So to lock up Jonathan Isaac at that price point, give him a little bit of a raise. He was going to make $14.7 million this year, 24-25. And now you're going to bump up to I think I read the reporting was like $25 million.
Yeah.
And it decreases at 40% the next few years. And then even they protected themselves. I think he has to play at least 58 games in some of the future years, the final 3 years, to get that guaranteed money. And that's not a guarantee. So that was just such a smart move by Jeff Altman in the front office to do that. And I think from Jonathan's perspective, he wants those years in a contract. He wants stability. He wants, the money is one thing, but to get a contract with that many years on it, you look around the league, there was a reason Paul George wanted the contract he wanted. He wasn't going to take 2 or 3 years. He wanted multiple years like that. And for Jonathan Isaac, I think it makes a lot of sense to given what he's gone through his career. There were a lot of fans on social media and whatnot. Some of the rhetoric was like, the Magic should trade Jonathan Isaac. And I'm like, why would they trade a guy they just stuck through with all of this that he's gone through and just now has a great season? Like, I think the opposite is you re-sign him and extend him the way they did. And at best, he's a first-team all-defense, second-team all-defense. He's in that decoy conversation. If he's able to play 60-plus games or 65 games to meet the required minimum, he came pretty close this past year. And at worst, he's still a role player coming off the bench who's this ultimate X factor, and he still misses 20 to 30 games this season, and you're not paying him as much as someone who could play the whole year or a lot of more games. So I think it's a really smart deal. And then with Gary Harris, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I was a little surprised. I thought when they signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Gary Harris, in order for him to come back, would take a pay cut and be willing to come off the bench. And guess what happened? He took a pay cut and clearly is willing to come off the bench. The positive of that is if KCP has an injury or, God forbid, Jalen Suggs has an injury or something like that happens where maybe a guy gets sick, as we saw it happens in the NBA, Gary Harris is able to start. I mean, he's still of that level. Obviously, again, it goes back to Franz's shooting woes. Part of the problem with Gary is when your only job is to shoot and you're not making your shots, it's magnified more. So, and I don't think Gary was very healthy this year. Obviously, we talked about his health concerns earlier when talking about the addition of KCP, but to have a guy like that clearly invested in the Magic and be willing to take, $7.5 million compared to the money he was making previous years, he's realizing where he is in his career. Maybe he could have gotten more money from the Detroit Pistons or one of those other teams in the East where, you're not on a winning team, but you're a veteran trying to help the same way he helped Orlando, the same way he helped Denver in the past. But clearly he saw an opportunity and the Magic were interested in bringing him back. And it's great. I mean, you add, KCP, who's a vet, and you bring back Gary Harris. I'm not sure what the expectation was with Joe Ingles and how quickly that developed, him going to Minnesota, of course. But to bring back Gary after losing Joe in that aspect is a big win for the Magic, especially at the price point. for sure.
I was really shocked because I said on here I thought Gary Harris was probably done. I
Yep.
fully expected him going to an immediate contender for maybe similar money, and I really thought Joe Ingles would be back. So for me, it was a bit of a shock. And you've mentioned, Jason, there's obviously the one roster spot that's open, and if you were in a crystal ball, what do you think the Magic would do? Do you think they'll leave it open, or do you think, like, how can they avoid the luxury tax? What would be your prediction on that?
Yeah, I think the Magic aren't in a position too worried this year to be worried about the first or the second apron. Even that's something more down the line. When those extensions come up, and you look at Franz taking up, I think, up to 30% of the cap if he gets all NBA vote in the future, or all NBA team in the future, and if he doesn't, it goes down to 27% of the cap or 25% of the cap, and you're going to have Jalen Suggs maybe not on a max, but similar numbers, pretty high percentage of the cap, and obviously you mentioned Paolo and his future contract as well. But the Magic were one of the few teams with significant cap space, and they had a clear plan that they wanted to add someone like a KCP and rework Jonathan Isaac and re-sign Mo Wagner and Gary Harris and Gogo Batadze. I think keeping Gogo is a big win as well,
Huge.
considering you look at the Bear center market and what the New York Knicks are going to have to do with missing on Batadze. But I think, knowing the Magic, they love financial flexibility. They're probably going to keep this roster spot open for a little bit longer. Saying that probably means they're going to, me saying that probably means they're going to do something real quick. So I still think, knowing Jeff Waltman, knowing the front office, I would lean towards leaving that spot open for a little bit. They've already done so for a week or so since those deals became official, or at least a handful of days. So, they're going to wait and see what they need and where the roster sits. And, having that spot open allows you to go in the training camp, and maybe there's someone out there who's thinks they're worth X, Y, Z, and now they go a couple months unsigned, and they get the, October or September and go, wait, I need to go somewhere. So, maybe there's someone they have in mind, but I think my best guess is they leave it open for a little bit. They keep that financial flexibility open, that roster flexibility open. They take their time with this because it's an important role. I mean, you could add a player who doesn't, who maybe fits a need, or maybe they take a spin on someone who's young or something like that. But that would be my guess, and I don't know exactly. I'm hoping to figure this out at Summer League, talking with those around the league, that what went down with Joe Ingles specifically. Was it one of those things where the Magic were just anticipating him to be back and they wouldn't have this roster spot, now they have to reevaluate their summer plan? Or was it something where he informed them and they were aware of it, and they knew this was happening? I think when they declined the club option, that was something they anticipated, but when he actually went out and signed with Minnesota for a 1-year deal to join some of his old buddies from the Jazz and Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley Jr., an opportunity to win a title at his age doesn't come around often. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Joe to go help Minnesota. They just reached the conference finals. Not saying the Magic, you look at what Indiana did this last year. The Magic, with KCP, probably beat Cleveland. I don't know if they beat Boston per se. They obviously just won that championship, but certainly if you find the right seed and the right pathway, you can reach the conference finals in the East with how open it is. But for Joe, it makes a lot of sense. For the Magic, I think having that roster spot, they're going to lean towards flexibility, knowing how they work.
Okay. Now, this relates to kind of the Summer League, but also the pair of remaining two-way contracts that we have. Do you see the likes of, we've got 5 or 6 players who have all got some NBA experience within this Summer League squad. So there's Jarrett Culver, there's Teo Maledon, Jay Huff, Xavier Moon, Charlie Brown Jr. Do you see these guys making a run at potentially that one or both of those contracts, or do you see it becoming potentially somebody from the Osceola Magic?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Jarrett Culver is a really intriguing name. Obviously, he's the number 6 top 10 pick from 2019, and he clearly hasn't found his exact foot in the NBA. I think based on some of the practice footage we've seen and whatnot, that the 3 starters we know for a fact are Jet, Anthony, and Tristan, and it seems as though Jay Huff and Jarrett Culver are going to be starting along those guys, at least to open Summer League. That can change, obviously, but that's kind of based on the jersey colors and whatnot they've been wearing. That's kind of where we see the starting 5 fit. I think Jared's probably the one guy, just given his experience. He's a little bit older. It kind of makes sense. You look at the Trevlin Queen type guy who they brought back on a 2-way contract and his experience and whatnot. Maybe being that 2-way guy who can shoot threes. I think Jared kind of fits that form. If there is a trade down the line, there's a lot of speculation around the league about Wendell Carter Jr. I don't think they're going to trade him anytime soon, but who knows what happens. Maybe adding Jay Huff and having him as on a 2-way would make some sense. If you have Mo Wagner and Goga Batadze in there, you need another big, but assuming they don't trade Wendell, which I don't expect them to at this point, but that just because you're on the Summer League, just because you're on the Orlando Summer League roster doesn't mean you can land in Orlando. Like they
Absolutely.
can go after other guys, who aren't on a contract, of course, non-draft picks or guys who are just joining a certain squad for Summer League. They could, look around that as well. But it's interesting. I think there's an argument for Mac McClung to earn a 2-way spot, given his prowess of shooting and what he showed in Osceola last year. And that name obviously has a little bit of a fan base that comes with it. But I don't expect them to make any 2-way moves immediately after Summer League unless they hear something that one of their guys is going to go sign somewhere else. But chances are this is really more of a time for them to get guys in training camp, and then they'll
I would agree.
Work through that process, kind of like what they did last year. It is interesting that they're essentially moving on from Kevon Harris. Kevon's going through Summer League with the Memphis Grizzlies, but
he's
not coming back. And Admiral Schofield wasn't eligible for a 2-way anymore. He's headed to EuroLeague. So that's where the 2 spots come from, of course. But I think when you look at a type of the 2-way player that they probably like more so is someone like a Trevlin Queen. But if they feel the need, they need to add a big man in there like a Jay Huff or some of those other centers on their roster. I actually really like Orlando's Summer League team. I think there is some potential there for Jared Culver to show that he is worthy of where he got drafted. Obviously, he's had some shooting problems and they need shooting, so maybe that doesn't make much sense. But obviously, if he has a stellar performance or goes and performs well in training camp, maybe they reward him with that final spot. But I think there's definitely some quality names out there on the Summer League roster and going into training camp for sure.
Yeah, he's just because this time around that the list of names, they just jumped out at you. There's some talent on there. There's some available talent on there. But
it's definitely a much stronger squad than last year. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think at the top, Anthony and Jet might only play 1 game. They might play 2 games, but Tristan probably plays at least 2 games, maybe 3 games. Those guys are going to be done after that. But depth-wise, it's a really talented roster. I think it's a little bit stronger than last year's squad, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, mate, I don't want to take up too much more of your time because we really do appreciate you coming on in such a busy period and kind of squeezing us in just before, not exactly before you head to the airport, but it's not far off. So, mate, thank you so much. We have genuinely enjoyed it. It's been fascinating to hear your takes directly from being in and around the Magic camp, and we're going to have to get you back on to hear what's happened Summer League wise. It'd be good to hear the insight again, man. That's been excellent. Thank you so much. Jason, just before you go, where can people follow you on your socials?
Yeah, at the Real Beede on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, by the way, but at the Real Beede on Twitter.
We do.
And of course, OrlandoSentinel.com is where you can read all my work. But if you just look at my name on social media, you can find me, follow me. I'm going out for Vegas for about 5 days, so that should be a lot of fun. And then, of course, it slows down a little bit after Summer League. I'm actually going to the Olympics as a fan, which should be a lot of fun.
Wow.
Taking a little bit of vacation with my girlfriend. We're going to the Paris Games, and we are scheduled to see Germany men's basketball play against Brazil, actually. So I get to see the Wagner brothers hopefully play in group play. So that should be fun. I won't be working per se, but maybe there'll be some social media video to come from that. But and then training camp's around the corner. I mean, it slows down a little bit after Summer League, but it picks right back up, and that's exciting. So absolutely.
That's amazing. Very jealous of the trip to Paris. It's a beautiful city if you haven't been. It'd be an amazing time. Jason, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
And that's it. Mikey can cut at that. So that's 33, 35. Jason, that's been amazing, mate.
Great.
Thank you so much. It's been, as I say, altogether too long to get you on here. So it's been very much appreciated. Thoroughly, really good, really good.
No, it's I find it really cool that you guys do this like over there. Like
We love it, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we have a community of Magic fans who, if you put something out at 3 in the morning when the Magic are tipping off, when they're on the West Coast, there will be UK fans up watching and involved in the conversation. It's I'm not claiming I'm one of them. Gary more often than I am.
Not so much these days.
So what is it? 6? You guys are 6 hours ahead?
5 hours. Yeah.
Oh, 5 hours. Okay.
5. We get a very small window between, in sort of around the when the clocks change both times. We get a very small window where it tends to be just a 4-hour period between, and that for us is an absolute luxury. We love an early. We call an early tip 10, 11 p.m. over here. So if you know,
Yeah.
if we've got a tip that happens before midnight, we're calling it luxury. We think it's great. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the summer league games are all kind of, at least the first one's at.
The first one's good. First one's good. 4 p.m. So 9 p.m. for us.
Yeah. 9
Rest
PM,
of them.
yeah, that's not bad.
Rest of them. It's for the early hour boys, and the rest of us are watching on demand on League Pass.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, amazing, mate. Thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
let's say, if we're okay to keep in touch, we'd love to do so.
Yeah, absolutely, totally.
If there's anything we can do from our end, Jason, just shout.
Yep. Yeah. Tag me. I'll retweet. I'll share. Thank you, guys. Totally.
Amazing. Thank you, man. Thank you. And have a safe trip to both Vegas and Paris. It's going to be amazing for you, man.
Thank you.
Super. Excellent. I really enjoyed that. It's been, as I said, too long to actually getting Jason on. Some really good insights. And there's a little bit of something I want to pick up on with you, Gary, in relation to what he said. But before we go there, we'll do the plug for our partner, Attraction Tickets, UK #1 attraction ticket provider for Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Disneyland Paris, and many other worldwide popular attractions, including here in the UK, like Thorpe Park and Alton Towers. Amongst other deals that they are currently offering, they have 10% off the display price for all Orlando tickets and hotel packages. So if you are thinking of doing Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, or you're thinking of doing the Christmas party or Halloween Horror Nights, those tickets are included. It can save you 10%. Click off of our socials on the link, or the link that's in this episode, and bag yourself a bargain. They also sell Orlando Magic tickets at hugely competitive prices. They will be available almost as soon as the schedule is announced in mid-August. You can also visit our website, letstalkmagic.com, for all our affiliate links and discount codes, including to the NBA store and Fanatics. So there we go. That's all done. Now let's get into this again. So I want to talk. It was interesting hearing what Jason was saying around kind of the roles that guys are going to take. So I just want to ask you briefly before we close today, as this roster stands at the moment, Gary, how do you see the rotations being, primarily for the starting roster and the bench rotations? And you don't have to go into detail on minutes and whatever, but what do you sort of see as the distribution of time amongst the guys?
I'm glad you haven't asked for precise minutes, because I'm not doing that. I think we could probably agree that the backcourt's going to be KCP and Jalen Suggs to start the season, if everyone's healthy. Suggs played his way into like the number 3 option on the Magic of the 3 amigos type. He's certainly there. KCP, they haven't brought him in to sit on the bench. We needed an upgrade. Equally good defender. He talked about it in his press conference about what he was going to try and form with Jalen Suggs, and he spreads the floor a bit. Everybody knows that Paolo and Franz are starting in the front court. One of them's looking at All-NBA, probably targeting next season in Paolo. He's an all-star, and the other one's got a max contract. So it's clear they're starting, and they're going to see significant minutes. And as Suggs, Paolo, and Franz go, as goes the Magic. And that is in terms of production, health, and everything else. It's probably fair to say that with a pre-season behind them and hopefully being injury-free, Wendell's going to start the centre spot, I think, as well. I don't think that would shock anyone, so there's no hot takes there. The bench unit's a lot more interesting because we do have a lot of depth there, even though we have lost some players. I think the loss of Markelle Fultz signals that they're going to give Anthony Black minutes. I think Cole didn't have a great end of the season, but we know there was a lot going on there, and we know at his best he's six-man level producer.
Absolutely.
So I think Anthony Black and Cole Anthony are going to have the backcourt rotation to start with. I think the Magic do what we've seen. Now we're past that point of being a development team. We saw it with Anthony Black and Jet Howard, that rookies were no longer guaranteed to get big minutes. So for that reason, I think Tristan De Silva is going to have to earn his spot. And I also think Jet Howard will have to earn minutes as well. I do think he'll be in the squad. I don't think he'll be busted down into the G League or anything. But I think you'll probably see Gary Harris seeing the floor a bit with Cole Anthony and Anthony Black. Jonathan Isaac, it goes without saying. We know he's a disruptor and a game changer. And I think with GI, to get the offensive end of it, Mo Wagner, again, increased deal is going to feature. However, I think there are minutes there for Goga. And I say that because I think, depending on the matchup, we've talked about it before, there's minutes there. They haven't given him that contract, I think, just to be there. I think he will feature. And I think if Wendell gets off to a bad start, that might eat some of his minutes. And then the likes of De Silva, Jet Howard, Caleb Houston, etc., they're going to have to earn their way in. And what I would say for Jet Howard and what I would say for Tristan De Silva in particular is we know that Gary Harris has had injury issues. Jason's talked about it as well.
Absolutely,
It might well be that's how one of them gets their foot in the door and keeps it in, because they haven't drafted Tristan De Silva for potential.
I agree. I think for me, 9 players write themselves straight in.
Yeah.
And then if you talk, we seem to see with Coach Mosley that excluding sort of the trash minutes at the end of a game, if it's a blowout one way or the other, you tend to see him operating around a 10-man unit. So you're then looking at that 10th player as to who that could be. I entirely agree with you. I think it's Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Franz, Paolo, and Wendell for the starting 5. I think of those, I'd be surprised if you're seeing 4 of those playing much under 30, 35 minutes in a game. I think Wendell is the guy who may have less minutes than the others, simply because of his injury history, and rather than overstrain him early in the season, I wonder if you're going to see more of a rotation between the 3 guys that we have. The bench, I entirely agree with you there, mate. The 4 just write themselves straight in. Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, Mo Wagner. I can see Anthony Black being given the opportunity to play as a point guard, show what he is capable of. I'd be very surprised if they aren't expecting big steps in his ability to see a pass and be more aggressive, attacking the basket or taking the opportunity. Because we did see that he is capable of hitting a 3. He didn't take many. There was sort of a reluctance last season. Now, whether or not that was a rookie thing or not, I don't know. But I can see him being encouraged to do that. Mo Wagner, I think he takes the majority of the backup minutes for the centre position. You can't discount Jonathan Isaac having a few minutes in that. But I'm going to say I don't anticipate him playing 30 minutes in a game. You're looking again, I think, around the 20-minute mark, perhaps up to 25. But then if I was being pushed at this moment in time, I think that 5th player role is a straight battle between Jet Howard, Gary Harris and Tristan De Silva. And both Summer League and then subsequently training camp will have a big impact on that. The training camp is going to be massive. We're going to see, so we saw last year, there were 3 set units. You'd got, what was it, the
Green Goblins, wasn't it?
The Green Goblins or something like that, wasn't it, that they were calling themselves for the... You're going to see that again, and I like the fact that we do have proposed rosters, shall we say, and that that the coach tries to play those units regardless of injury. He tries to keep those units together. I like that continuity. I think it's going to be an interesting question to see who gets those additional minutes, though. It's. I don't think we see necessarily Gary Harris having the heavy minutes that he had last season. Again, it keeps him available by not playing quite so many minutes, and you're allowing youth to develop itself.
And you would imagine in a bench rotation, he's not up against starters, but we know he's a very capable player.
Absolutely.
And I also, part of my rationale, Paul, I don't disagree with anything you've said there. Part of my rationale is you've talked about Mo Wagner and Cole Anthony getting minutes. I think to counterbalance that, you're going to see defenders in GI, Gary Harris and Jonathan Isaac, and you're going to have that balance off the bench.
We appreciate fully that it's going to be situational at times as well. If you're facing a team that's gone small, you're gonna change what you've got. If you are seeing a particular centre is dominating somebody, you're going to change that up. We do appreciate that it's going to be situational, but on kind of on paper, this is the average. Yeah, that's what we're talking about on this one. Yeah. Okay, mate. I think that's going to do it for this week then. We're recording our next episode again next Thursday. We're recording this on Thursday the 11th. We're recording the next one on Thursday the 18th of July. So make sure that you've subscribed to the podcast and hit the notification button so as not to miss anything. I've just put out a preview of Summer League if you want to watch that. I do apologise for the state of me in it. The medication had clearly very much kicked in as I was recording that. But anyway, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the episode, please give it a thumbs up. Leave us your questions and thoughts. As I say, don't forget to subscribe. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, TikTok and X. All are at _Let's Talk Magic. So from the absent Mikey, the absent Garant, Gary and myself, until next week, go Magic.